Good evening, dear colleagues from across the globe. On behalf of Gemini Neurosurgical Society, WFNS Young Neurosurgeon Forum, and the Pakistan Society of Neurosurgeons, I warmly welcome to the sixth webinar of Module 4 Spine and Spinal Cord. Today, we are privileged to have Dr. Victor Hugo Perez, who will speak on anatomy of craniocervical junction, a region of extraordinary complexity and surgical significance. So we also have a chairperson, Professor Jeb Sirian, Director of Neurosciences at Parole University and Chair of Innovation Committee of WFNS. The craniovertebral junction represents the transition between brain and the spine, where stability, vascularity, anatomy, and neural elements converge, making anatomical mastery essential for safe surgery. Without further delay, I invite Dr. Perez to begin his presentation. Welcome to our webinar, Mr. Perez.
Thanks, Professor Karaf, Professor Ahmed. Thank you so much. This is really a honor for me to be with you to talk about these important topics. And I think they are really, really important for brain surgeons. So let me share my screen. I'm going. Is it okay? Is this
Yes,
okay?
it's perfect. Yes, Professor.
Whole screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk about craniovertebral junction anatomy, specifically about occipital condyles, C1, C2 ligaments, vertebral artery variations. So craniovertebral junction consists of the inferior skull base. In the right side, we can see the posterior view of the craniocervical junction. Here we can see the atlas, the axis, along with the muscles and connective tissues that link the skull to the cervical spine. This region protects and contains the central nervous system, including the transition from the brain stem to the spinal cord, as well as the encephalic vasculature and the cerebrospinal fluid system. Functionally, it connects the intracranial cerebrospinal fluid cisterns with the spinal cerebrospinal fluid pathways. This is the anatomical region encompassing the foramen magnum, occipital condyles here, and the first two cervical vertebrae, atlas and axis. The foramen magnum, located at the center of the skull base, is divided into three parts: the dorsal, escamosal, ventral, clival or basal, and condylar portions. Here are the condylar portions. The condylar portion contains the occipital condyles, the posterior margin of the jugular foramen, and the hypoglossal canal. The occipital condyle forms the sole articulation between the occipital bone and the atlas. The craniovertebral junction is closely related to critical neurovascular and musculoskeletal structures, including the medulla oblongata, the medulla oblongata, as you can see here in this picture. This is really a beautiful picture about arteries and veins. They have been injected with silicone, color red for arteries and color blue for veins. This is an anterior aspect of the brain stem, specifically the pons, medulla oblongata, and upper part of the cervical spine. So this includes the medulla oblongata, upper spinal cord, lower cranial nerves, 9, 10, 11, and also the 12th cranial nerve or hypoglossal nerve. So vertebral arteries, these are some vertebral arteries, and veins, and atlas, axis, and occipital bone with their key ligamentous and muscular attachments. The last four cranial nerves are involved specifically with the approach of craniovertebral junction. So 9, 10, 11, and 12. Also the first cranial nerve, second cranial nerve. But in this case, we have the spinal artery, anterior spinal artery, coming from the vertebral artery. Later, I'm going to talk a little bit about some variants of the vertebral artery. Here we can see an hypoglossal, a hypoplastic right vertebral artery, and this is a common shape of the vertebral artery. So here we have two spinal arteries. One is longer than the other one. The other one finished in the medulla oblongata. Occipital condyles, the intercondylar distances of the occipital bone. The intercondylar distances are defined as follows. Anterior intercondylar distance, in here, letter A, the distance between the anterior tips of the right and left occipital condyles. The middle intercondylar distance, the distance between the highest, most superior points or tops of the right and occipital condyles. And the posterior intercondylar distance, the distance between the posterior tips of the right and left occipital condyles. Here we have a picture about the inferior cranial base and the foramen magnum and the occipital condyles between them. And let's go to next slide. Here we have the shape of occipital condyles. We can find several shapes of this foramen magnum. For example, in this case, letter A, the foramen magnum has a shape of an egg. In the second, this is round. The C tetragonal, oval, irregular. This is foramen magnum irregular. This is defined as the hexagonal. This is a pentagonal. So it has several shapes, the foramen magnum. And here we have a very important foramen in the knee of the occipital condyles. This is the hypoglossal canal. The height of the occipital condyle is measured as the distance between the intracranial opening of the hypoglossal canal and the midpoint of the occipital condyle. Here is the occipital condyle and the hypoglossal canal. Here we have a scheme, a drawing about the main ligaments of the craniocervical junction. So here we have the dura, tectorial membrane complex, the superior band of cruciform ligament, the alar ligaments in both sides, transverse band of cruciform ligament, accessory ligaments, and the dura and posterior spine ligament merge to become tectorial membrane. And posterior longitudinal ligament, here we have the posterior longitudinal ligament, spinal dura, capsular ligaments, in the facets of C1, C2, and the apical ligament. So main functions of these ligamentous are the next. Limit excessive flexion, extension, rotation, and lateral bending. Protect the brain stem and upper cervical spinal cord. Maintain atlanto-occipital and atlanto-axial alignment. Provide resistance against translational displacement. Act as secondary stabilizers during physiological motion. So the key ligaments involved are lateral ligaments. These ligaments limit rotation and lateral flexion, transverse ligament of the atlas, and prevents anterior displacement of the dens. Here we have the dens. The apical ligament contributes minor vertical stability, tectorial membrane, resists hyperflexion. Here we have this, the apical ligament. Anterior and posterior atlanto-occipital membranes reinforce capsular stability. So we know that there are several lines to identify some pathologies in the craniovertebral junction, especially mainly some structural anomalies. Chamberlain's line is the lane from the posterior margin of the hard palate. Here we have the hard palate to the posterior margin of the foramen magnum. In normal cases, the odontoid process should be almost 3 millimeters around this line, the distance between this Chamberlain line to the point, to the dens. The MacGregor line is a line drawn on a lateral skull radiograph or CT and MRI from the posterior edge of the hard palate to the most caudal point to the occipital curve. So it is used primarily to diagnose basilar invagination. And McRae's line, it is a line drawn on a lateral X-ray, CT or MRI from the anterior margin of the foramen magnum, the basion, to the posterior margin, the opistheon. Here we have the McRae line. The tip of the odontoid process, the peg of the C2 vertebra should normally be about 5 millimeters below McRae's line. If the tip crosses above this line, it is a strong indicator of basilar invagination or atlantoaxial impaction. The upper cervical spine is composed of the first and second cervical vertebra, known as the atlas and axis. The craniocervical junction serves as a structural connection between the skull and the cervical spine, establishing continuity between the foramen magnum and the spinal canal. The atlas is formed by the anterior and posterior arcs, which are connected by the lateral masses that bear the superior and inferior articular facets. This is what I am showing you is a model handmade in resin, this model. And I have been doing this kind of models for learning, especially you know that it's difficult to get some models because they are made with no specific no real shape. These models are a copy of a real one. So when we get the Resina models, they are really almost as if they were real. So at the same time, I have been doing some dissections of the craniocervical junction, and in this case, I want to show you this picture. This is really nice because in here we can identify the cruciate ligament, a very nice picture. The cruciate ligament is this. Here we have the apical ligament, the alar ligaments, and the tectorial membrane in covering this anatomical region. This is another picture to foreseeing the posterior aspect of the posterior fossa and the craniovertebral junction. So here we have the lower four cranial nerves. In the left side, we have the amygdalas of the cerebellum, the medulla oblongata, and the transition between medulla oblongata and upper cervical spine. Here we have the first spinal nerves, 1, 2, 3, the posterior spinal nerves. And in this case, we have a very important feature. Here we have the posterior meningeal artery. This posterior meningeal artery is coming from the vertebral arteries. Once the vertebral artery enters to the cavity of the skull base, it gives rise to this artery, posterior meningeal artery. This is very important because is going to the posterior aspect of spinal cord and also the posterior aspect of the medulla oblongata. Doing some dissection in this region, we can see other features, specifically the entering of the vertebral arteries into the cranial cavity, and this is the atlas and the vertebral artery here. So this is before dissection of this one, and this is after removing the bone structures in here. So I want to show you this dissection in order to see the anterior spinal arteries. This is a view of the anterior aspect of the brainstem, specifically the junction of both vertebral arteries to form the basilar artery. So let me run this video. The right vertebral artery, the left vertebral artery. I want you to see the arachnoid, the arachnoid complex in this zone. So right anterior spinal artery, left anterior spinal artery. Sometimes it's only one anterior spinal artery. In this case, they were three, as you can see here. Here we have one, this is another one, and this is another. So three anterior spinal arteries. And look the complexity of the arachnoid covering this medulla oblongata and also the superior spinal cord, cervical spinal cord. This is very important because when you are going to resect a meningioma of the foramen magnum, this meningioma could be attached to these arteries, specifically vertebral arteries, and also these very, very small anterior spinal artery. They are very important, as we are going to see in the next slides. So I want to repeat this dissection because I think this is one of the most important anatomical variations that we can see in this region, and we should have to take care of this artery when you are going to remove meningio. I insist, the meningio could be attached to these small vessels and also with the lower cranial nerves. Let's go to the next slide. In this case, we have two vertebral arteries almost in the same size. So the lower cranial nerves, 9, 10, 11, and the 12 cranial nerves. Here we have the anterior inferior cerebellar artery, the posterior inferior cerebellar arteries, and here we have two anterior spinal arteries. Sometimes we find only one anterior spinal artery. So this is another picture. This is a nice picture because in here we can see both arteries almost the same size, and we have two anterior spinal arteries coming from the right vertebral artery. Also, we can see several veins several veins, and these arteries in the anterior aspect of the medulla oblongata. In the dissection, we go to step by step, removing the arteries, then going to cut the perforator arteries to the anterior aspect of the medulla oblongata, and then after we can dissect this very, very important structure that is known as the corticospinal tract of the central nervous system. So here we have the causation, and I want to show you this in another slide. Dissection is really, really beautiful to observe, to dissect this anterior corticospinal tract. The pyramidal decussation is located in the most caudal portion of the medulla oblongata. At the spine medullary junction, approximately at the level of the foramen magnum and anterior to the central canal. On the ventral surface of the medulla, the medullary pyramids can be observed. These longitudinal prominences are formed by the descending fibers of the corticospinal tract. The decussation consists of the crossing of voluntary motor fibers originating in the cerebral cortex. Approximately 85 to 90% of these fibers cross at this level to form the contralateral corticospinal tract, while the remaining 10 to 15% descend as the anterior corticospinal tract and crosses more distally at the segmental level of the spinal cord. So let's go to dissect this anterior spinal artery, and here we have the right, left vertebral arteries. The pica, the right side. And I'm going to cut this anterior spinal artery. Look the size of these perforators branches. And then when I was doing this dissection, I was I was really impressed about the beauty of this corticospinal tract. Acusación de las pirámides aquí en la vía corticoespinal a nivel de puente. Here we have the pons, the ventral aspect of the corticospinal trunk crossing the medulla oblongata. And then look at this. This is really beautiful. The decussation of these tracts. Almost 90%, 85% of these fibers decussate to the other side, and 10% of them goes in the same side. So here we have the lateral corticospinal tract and the anterior corticospinal tract in the spinal cord. For me, really, really beautiful to watch this video. So the transverse processes of the atlas attached to the lateral masses and contain the transverse foramina. This is the transverse foramina, which together form a protective yet flexible canal for the vertebral arteries throughout the cervical spine. Proper alignment of the occiput, atlas, and axis is essential for maintaining the structural and functional integrity of the spinal cord and brain stem. This craniovertebral junction is primarily stabilized by ligaments and membranes rather than bone. The atlantoaxial joint is one of the most complex and unique spinal articulations. It's horizontally oriented. The convex facets permit significant rotational movement but provide limited inherent osseous stability. The transverse band of the cruciate ligament extending between the lateral masses of the atlas and passing posterior to the dens secures the odontoid process against the anterior arc of C1, preventing posterior displacement into the spinal canal. So here we have the alar ligaments that are much larger and stronger than the apical or accessory ligaments. Damage to the alar ligaments can cause joint instability and excess motion. When I was doing some of these dissection, it's really impressive how is strong this ligament. Really, really impressive. And here we have the dens of the axis. What you can see in here is also the tectorial membrane that was displaced to the left side. Here is the tectorial membrane. So another pictures about this before dissection of the dens, we can see some ligaments in here. So after cutting this tectorial membrane, we can see this membrane. So ligaments and membranes of the craniocervical junction. In this picture, we can see a tectorial membrane, a cruciform ligament, the anterior longitudinal ligament in front of the cervical vertebrae, the posterior longitudinal ligament. They are primary stabilizers of the anterior and middle columns of the spine. Superiorly, the posterior longitudinal ligament continues above the mid C2 level as the tectorial membrane. This is the tectorial membrane. Here we have the tectorial membrane. This one. This is the tectorial membrane. whose collagen structure is continuous with that of the PLL and merges with the anterior dura mater. Together, the ALL and the PLL function as paired suboccipital stabilizers that resist flexion and extension forces. Additionally, the capsular ligaments contribute to spinal stability by limiting excessive flexion and rotational movements at the facet joints. Here we have the facet joints. The tectorial membrane, here we have the tectorial membrane, this one is really strong. It is a superior continuation of the posterior longitudinal ligament and attached to the periosteum along the anterior margin of the foramen magnum at the basion. It is a key stabilizer of the craniocervical junction, particularly in limiting flexion, traumatic hyperflexion, especially when combined with anterior translation, is considered the primary mechanism responsible for injury to this membrane. Tectorial membrane. Dense apical, the alar ligaments. Anatomy of CBJ ligamentous. Principal stabilizing ligaments of C1 are the transverse atlantal ligament and alar ligaments. Secondary stabilizing are more elastic and weaker than the primary ligaments. Apical ligament, anterior and posterior atlanto-occipital membranes, tectorial membrane, ligamentum flavum, ALL and PLL, anterior and posterior longitudinal ligaments, and capsular ligaments. The anterior atlanto-occipital membrane is about 2 centimeters wide and consists of densely woven fibers that radiate in a slightly lateral pattern. Central fibers are thicker than the lateral portion. Lateral fibers interconnect with the AO capsules. Ligament is continuous caudally with the anterior atlas and axis ligament through it to the anterior longitudinal ligament of the spinal column. It acts as a tension band that stretches during extension, serving as a secondary stabilizer against this motion. The tectorial membrane, dorsal to the cruciate ligament, a strong band of longitudinally oriented fibers attached to the dorsal surface of the C3 vertebra, axis body, and the body of dens. It is the rostral extension of PLL, as I told you, of the vertebral column, essential for limiting flexion, and the accessory bands of the ligament passing to the lateral capsule of the articular joints of the axis. This is known also Arnold's ligament, atlas and axis joints. Anatomy of craniovertebral junction. The alar ligaments are 2 strong cords that attach to the dorsal lateral body of the dens, about 8 millimeters wide. These are these ligaments. Fibers extend laterally and rostrally, as you can see in this beautiful picture. They are ventral and cranial to the transverse ligament. Alar ligament allow an anterior shift of C1 from 3 to 5 millimeters. They limited the head atlas rotatory movement on the odontoid axis, as well as strengthen the capsule of the apical ligaments. A slender band of fibers about 2 and 5 millimeters wide and 2 and 8 millimeters long, containing a small amount of collagen. No mechanical significance. Again, the alar ligaments and the membrane, the tectorial membrane. So here we have another picture to show the cranial nerves. Lower four cranial nerves are closely related to craniovertebral junction. 9 and 10 cranial nerve arise from the medulla in the groove between the inferior olivary nucleus and the inferior cerebellar peduncle. The 9 and 10, here we have 9 and 10, are separated by a dural sheet which separates these nerves as they penetrate the dura to enter the jugular foramen. The accessory nerve, here we have, this is the accessory nerve, is the only cranial nerve that passes through the foramen magnum. The accessory nerve is composed of two parts. The cranial part of the accessory portion, ramus internus, is the smaller of the two and is accessory to the vagus. It arises from the medulla, is composed of multiple rootlets and joins the vagus nerve. The major portion, ramus externus, is the spinal portion formed by a series of rootlets arising from the lower medulla and upper spinal cord. The rootlets may arise as low as a C7 root level. So again, I want to show you some dissection of this region. I think this is a video that demonstrates the importance to know these delicate arteries. This is circumferential small artery coming from this right vertebral artery. But in this video, I want to show you the delicate fibers of arachnoid. Look, they are really, really impressive to make this dissection. I'm going to repeat. The anterior spinal arteries. Look, for example, this small artery. This small artery. I'm going to put this arachnoid. At the end of this video, you can see how I cut this artery. Look at this. In here, I cut this artery. These are the risks in surgical resection of lesions involving this area. So we should care these small vessels. So let's go to next slide. The C1, C2, and C3 nerves distal to the ganglion divide into dorsal and ventral rami. The first cervical nerve located just below the foramen magnum, the C1 ventral root, also known as suboccipital nerve, is composed of 4 to 8 rootlets that join and coursed laterally and supplies the rectus capitis lateralis. The dorsal ramus is larger than the ventral ramus. The dorsal rami divide into medial and lateral branches that supply the skin and muscles of the posterior region of the neck. The dorsal ramus supplies rectus capitis, posterior major and minor, superior and inferior oblique, and the semispinalis capitis. The dorsal root of the first cervical nerve has variations in its composition and its connections with the accessory nerve. So the major arteries related to craniovertebral junction are vertebral, posterior inferior cerebellar arteries, and the meningeal branches of the vertebral and external and internal carotid arteries. Vertebral artery arises from the upper posterior part of the first segment of the subclavian artery in the neck. Each artery is divided into intradural and extradural parts. The extradural part is divided into 3 segments. Here we have a picture of this region. The terminal extradural segment of the vertebral artery gives rise to the posterior meningeal and posterior spinal arteries, branches to the deep cervical musculature, and infrequently the pica. I showed you this posterior meningeal artery in some anterior slide. So anatomic determination of optimal entry point and direction of C1 lateral mass is screw placement. So I think I have finished the content of this lecture, but additionally, I want to show you they are 3 slides because I think it's very important to reconstruct this kind of approach, especially when you have a a big resection of bone. So I have made some videos also made in resin to show the anatomical aspects of the entry point to stabilize with screws this region. Of course, this should be by experts in this field, in these surgical fields, because the vertebral artery and nerves in this region. So because the vertebral artery travels lateral to the lateral mass, then crosses medially over the C1 neural arc, it is at risk during instrumentation. Medially, the cord and canal contents are at risk, while the anatomy of C1, vertebra and lateral mass is well known. A specific definition of ideal entry points. So this is a matter of another lecture because this is very important for spine surgeons. And I think the last one is this. These are some measures in order to know the safest entry point into these vertebrae. So I think it's the last slide. Thank you so much for your attention, and I feel very honored to be with you. And I hope this lecture will be useful for your knowledge in these difficult anatomical areas. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Victor Hugo Perez. So, Professor, can we have 2 or 3 questions from the audience?
Yes, of course.
Yes, is there any question from anyone? So,
If anyone has
in
question,
your, yes,
if anyone has question, you can ask directly or post in the chat. Do you have any comment, Dr. Iqbal?
yes. Professor, what is most commonly overlooked anatomical landmark during posterior C1, C2 fixation?
Well, as I showed you in the last video, is of course the lateral process of in C1 and also in C2. And in the last pictures, you can see with detail the entry point. But what I have seen is that in several cases, this lateral aspect of C1 and also C2, they are very thin, very thin. That this bone do not permit the screw in an optim way, in a correct way. So you should think in variations of this part of the instrumentation, because you could have uh, surprises doing that.
Okay. One more question. Do you prefer angiography in every case of craniovertebral junction?
No, just in case of lesions that are very well vascularized, irrigated, but not is not. I think is not important. When you think that you are going to put in risk some arteries in that region, of course, you should make an arteriography before surgery.
That's good. And last question. What are your anatomical safe boundaries while doing lateral exposure?
Again, please.
What are your anatomical safety boundaries during for lateral exposure?
Well, for me, I was doing several approaches to the to far lateral approaches. I think that one of the best for me, one of the best landmark is the occipital condyles and the lateral process of C1. If you touch with your finger in thin persons, you can touch also the lateral process of C1.
Okay.
You can also, if you dissect muscles, skin, it's very easy to find this lateral process. So when you think in separating and to free the vertebral artery, I think that is the best landmark. Think so. If you define this lateral process, you are going to understand other anatomical structures around it.
Very clear. Thank you. So we should conclude the session.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you,
Doctor.
Professor. Yes,
Thank you very
Ahmed.
much. Thank you very much, Dr. Victor, for this amazing presentation. As always, we usually enjoy your presentations, and there's very nice dissections as always. Unfortunately, Professor Absherian apparently couldn't join us, and he had some technical issues. So, Dr. Iqbal, if you may want, you can conclude this session.
Yes, thank you, Professor Perez, for an outstanding and anatomical rich presentation. Your insights into the craniocervical junction anatomy will certainly enhance surgical precision for all of us. I thank YNS, WFNS, YNS chapter, Pakistan Society of Neurosurgery, and all participants worldwide for joining. We look forward to the next webinar in this comprehensive 31-week Academy of Excellence. Good evening from my side.
Good morning from Mexico.
So thank you, everyone, and
Thank you.
see you all, inshallah, next week. And thank you very
Inshallah.
much, Professor Victor, and thank you, Dr. Iqbal, for this excellent
you.
webinar.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and see you
Thank you.
next week, inshallah.